The kettle was still on when she knocked. I remember that because I had just measured out the chamomile, 2 heaping spoons into the old blue teapot my husband bought me at a flea market in Asheville the summer before he died, and the kettle was rumbling toward a boil, that low complaining sound it makes before it sings. It was a Tuesday, October, the kind of October afternoon in South Carolina where the light comes through the kitchen window at a slant and makes everything look honest. I was wearing my house sweater, the gray one with the hole near the cuff that I keep meaning to mend, and I had flour on my forearms because I'd been working on a pie crust earlier and never quite washed it all off. The knock was wrong. That's the only way I can put it. A knock can be a lot of things in this life. It can be the mailman or the church ladies or the boy from down the road who shovels my drive when it snows, which doesn't happen often here, but happens enough. But this knock was the kind that doesn't have any patience in it. 3 quick taps, and then a pause, and then another tap, fainter, like whoever was out there had run out of arm by the 3rd try. I opened the door, and my daughter-in-law was standing on the porch with one hand pressed flat against the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her up. Her name is Bethany. She is 27 years old. She works the 4 to midnight shift in the labor and delivery unit at the hospital over in Greenville, and she has been married to my son for 2.5 years. She is small. Not in a fragile way, normally. She is small, the way a sparrow is small. All quickness and warmth, brown eyes that go wide when she laughs. But on my porch that afternoon, she did not look like a sparrow. She looked like something that had been hit by a car and dragged itself to the side of the road. Her lip was split. There was blood, dried, on the side of her mouth and a fresh smear on the collar of her blouse. Her left cheek was already starting to go the color of an old plum. Her hair, which she always wears in a neat low ponytail, was half pulled out of it, with strands sticking to the side of her face where she had been crying. She was holding her right wrist against her stomach, like you'd hold a bird with a broken wing. She is 6 months pregnant, with my first grandchild, a boy. They were going to name him after my husband. She tried to say my name. She got as far as the first syllable, and then her face came apart, not loud. Bethany has never been a loud crier. She came apart the quiet way. The way a glass breaks if you set it down too hard on a stone counter, with that one small click that means everything underneath has already given. I pulled her inside and I shut the door behind her and I locked it. I don't know why I locked it. I have not locked my front door in the middle of the day in 30 years of living in this house. But my hand turned the bolt before my brain caught up to it, and looking back, I think my hand knew something my brain did not yet want to know. I sat her down at the kitchen table. The kettle was screaming by then, and I went and took it off the burner, and the silence after was very loud. I got a clean dish towel, and I ran it under cold water, and I came back and I sat next to her, not across from her, and I started to dab at her lip, very gently, the way I used to clean my son's scraped knees when he was 4 years old. "Honey," I said. "Honey." Who did this? She would not look at me. She was looking at the salt shaker on the table. "Bethany." "Sweetheart, I need you to tell me who did this." And then she whispered it. She did not say it. She whispered it like the word itself might make the thing more real if it came out at a normal volume. She said, "Your daughter." I want you to understand something before I go any further. My daughter is my oldest child. Her name is Maureen. She is 34 years old. She works in commercial real estate in Charlotte. She drives a white SUV that she leases every 2 years. She is the kind of woman who carries her own pens because she does not trust pens that other people have touched. She has been, since she was about 14, a person I have not entirely understood. I have loved her. I have always loved her. But I have not always understood her, and there is a difference, and any mother who tells you otherwise is lying or fooling herself. She did not like Bethany from the first Thanksgiving my son brought her home. Bethany grew up in a trailer outside of Spartanburg. Her mama raised her alone, did hair at a salon, died of a stroke when Bethany was in nursing school. Bethany worked 2 jobs to finish her degree. She is the gentlest, steadiest girl I have ever met, and the first time she sat down at my dining room table in the chair my husband used to sit in, with her napkin already in her lap before anyone else had thought to reach for theirs. Maureen looked at her across the cranberry sauce like she was looking at something the cat had brought up onto the porch. I knew it then. I did not say it then. There is a thing women of my generation do, which is to hope that we are wrong about the people we love. We sit on what we know, and we pat it down, and we tell ourselves it will be different next Christmas. I have done this my whole life, and I am not proud of it. What Maureen had said to Bethany that afternoon was many things. But the part Bethany whispered to me, the part she could get her mouth around, was this. She said, "Your daughter said this baby is going to come out of me and grow up to be exactly what I was. Trash with a college degree." She said it without crying. She was past the crying. Her hands were shaking on the table. "And then she put her hands on you," I said. I did not phrase it as a question. Bethany nodded. I will tell you what had happened, because she told me, in pieces, over the next 40 minutes, while I cleaned her face and got an ice pack out of the freezer and finally got her to let me look at her wrist, which was already swelling. My son and Bethany live 45 minutes from me, in a little ranch house outside of town. My son is a high school history teacher. His name is Caleb. He is 6'1" and built like a green bean, and he has never raised his voice at another human being in his life as far as I know. He was at school. Maureen had driven down from Charlotte supposedly to drop off a baby gift, which I now know was a lie, because there was no baby gift, and there never had been one. Bethany had let her in because Bethany lets everyone in. Bethany made her coffee. Bethany sat down with her at the kitchen table, and Maureen had started in. About the wedding, which had been small, because that was what they wanted. About the house, which Maureen thought was beneath her brother. About Bethany's mother, who Maureen called, and I will not repeat the word she used, but it was a word that has no business in any decent person's mouth, and certainly no business being said about a dead woman who is not there to answer back. About the baby. About how the baby was going to be raised. About what kind of mother Bethany was going to be. Bethany, my Bethany, who I have watched hold the hand of a stranger in a grocery store parking lot because the stranger was having a bad day, sat there and took it. She told me she just kept thinking, "She's family. She's Caleb's sister. Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene." She said she just kept staring at the salt shaker on her own kitchen table. The same kind of salt shaker, I noticed, as the one on mine. We bought them at the same Cracker Barrel 2 Christmases ago, the 4 of us, on one of the only outings we had ever taken together as a family. And then Maureen had said the part about the baby being trash. And Bethany finally had stood up. She had stood up and she had said, "I think you should go now." And Maureen had not gone. Maureen had stood up too. Maureen is 5'10" and she played college volleyball. Bethany is 5'2" and she is 6 months pregnant. Maureen had grabbed Bethany by the upper arm, hard enough to leave a hand-shaped bruise that I would see later that night when she changed into one of my nightgowns, and she had said something. Bethany would not tell me what. She said she could not say it again out loud. Then Maureen had shoved her, backward, into the corner of the kitchen counter. Bethany had caught herself on her right wrist on the way down and bit her own lip on the way back up. And then Maureen had left. She had picked up her purse and she had walked out of my son's house and she had gotten in her white SUV and she had driven away and she had not called an ambulance and she had not called my son and she had not called my son and she had not called me. She had just left her pregnant sister-in-law on a kitchen floor in October with a split lip and a swelling wrist and the word trash still ringing in her ears. Bethany had laid there a few minutes, she said. She had felt the baby move. She had cried. Then she had gotten herself up and she had not called Caleb because she did not want him to leave his classroom in the middle of teaching and get in a car upset and drive on the interstate. That is the kind of person my daughter-in-law is. She had not called 911 because she was scared, and because she said this in a very small voice, she was not sure anyone would believe her over a woman like Maureen. She had gotten in her own car, and she had driven, slowly, the back roads, the 45 minutes from her house to mine, because she did not know where else to go. She had driven past her own hospital, the one where she works, because she did not want to be a patient at the place where she is a nurse. She had come to me. I sat at that kitchen table with my hand on her good wrist, and I did not say anything for a long time. The tea had gone cold in the blue pot. The light through the window had changed. I could hear the clock on the wall over the stove, the one my husband had hung up the second week we moved into this house in 1986. I thought about a lot of things in that quiet. I thought about my husband, who had been gone 9 years that November. I thought about what he would have done, which would have been to put on his coat and pick up the phone and start making calls that ended with somebody losing something they cared about. I thought about my daughter at age 6, when she had pushed a smaller girl off a swing at the church picnic and then lied about it to my face, and how I had not punished her for the pushing, I had punished her for the lying, and how I have wondered ever since if I had gotten the lesson backwards. I thought about my grandson, who was the size of a head of romaine lettuce, give or take, according to the app on Bethany's phone, and who was at that moment 6 months into being a person, and who had today taken his first hit from another human being, from his own aunt. And I thought about a story my husband used to tell about his father, who had been a small-town lawyer in Mississippi for 51 years. He said his father had a saying. His father had said, "Honey, in this life there are 2 kinds of people. There are people who make noise, and there are people who make changes. And the one thing about the people who make noise is that you can always hear them coming." And he would say it slow, the way old country lawyers say things, and then he would wink at me. I stood up from the table. Bethany looked up at me. Her good eye was wide. "Stay here," I said. "Eat something. There's chicken and rice in the fridge. I'm going to make some phone calls. Then we're going to the hospital, the one in Anderson, not yours. They'll document everything. After that, you'll sleep in my guest room, and we'll call my son in the morning." "Mama," she said. She has called me Mama since the rehearsal dinner. "Mama, what are you going to do?" I looked at her. I tucked a piece of her hair behind her ear, the way my own mother used to do to me when I had a fever. "I am going to take care of it," I said. "I want you to remember something. You are my daughter now. You have been my daughter since my son put a ring on your finger. There is no difference in my heart between you and her. And what she did to you, she did to me. Do you understand what I'm saying to you, sweetheart?" She nodded. She started to cry again, quiet. I went into the back bedroom. I shut the door. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the one I had shared with my husband for 41 years, and I picked up the phone on the nightstand, the landline, because I still keep one, because some calls deserve a cord. I called my brother first, my younger brother. He is 64. He's been a judge in this state for 21 years. Before he was a judge, he was a prosecutor for 16 years. He picked up on the second ring. I told him in order what had happened. I told him in the flat voice I have used 3 times in my life. Once when my husband died, once when my mother died, and once now. He did not interrupt me. When I was done, he said, "Tell me the address of the house where it happened, and tell me whose name is on the deed." I told him, "The house is in my son and Bethany's name. Jointly," he said. Then it is unambiguous. A person entered a private home, refused to leave when asked, and physically assaulted a pregnant resident on the property. The pregnancy is an aggravating factor in this state. The injury to the wrist may be a felony depending on what the X-ray shows. The verbal threats may rise to a separate charge. Do you want me to tell you what your options are, or do you want me to tell you what I would do? Tell me what you would do, I said. He told me what you would do, I said. He told me. The second call I made was to my son's principal, who is a friend of mine from church. I told her I needed Caleb out of his last period and into his car and on his way to Anderson Memorial Hospital. I told her why in 2 sentences. She said, "He's walking out of the building in 10 minutes. She said, "Honey, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The third call I made was to my own attorney, a woman named Roxanne who has been handling my affairs since my husband died. I told her what had happened. I told her I wanted to know what my options were regarding my will, my house, my retirement accounts, and a beach property in North Carolina that I have not visited in 4 years. She said, "Come by tomorrow morning. Bring coffee. We have work to do." The fourth call I made was the hardest. I called the hospital, my hospital, our hospital, the one where Bethany works, and I asked for the night supervisor in labor and delivery, a woman who has known Bethany for 3 years and who has been to my house for Christmas dinner once. I told her what had happened. I told her favorite nurse was not going to be at work tonight, or for several nights. I told her that one of her nurses had been assaulted in her own home that afternoon. I asked her very politely to please make sure that the records from the hospital in Anderson, when they came through, were treated with the seriousness they deserved. She said, "I'll be there myself when you arrive. I'll personally walk her through every step. And honey, tell me the name of who did this." I told her. There was a long pause on the line. She said, "Understood." I drove Bethany to the hospital in Anderson myself. I will not bore you with the details of the next 4 hours because they were the slow, grinding hours of any emergency room visit, the paperwork and the x-ray and the ultrasound that, thank God, thank God, thank God, showed the baby was fine, heartbeat strong, fluid normal, kicking and turning like he did not know anything had happened, which I suppose he did not. The wrist was a hairline fracture. The lip needed 2 stitches. The bruise on her arm was photographed by a nurse with a measuring ruler held next to it. The bruise on her cheek was photographed too. So was the bruise that had bloomed by then on her hip, where she had hit the corner of the counter. Caleb arrived 70 minutes in. He came through the curtain of the exam room, and his face did not move, and he sat down beside his wife, and he took her good hand in both of his, and he put his forehead down on top of their hands. And he stayed like that for a long time, not crying, not speaking, just breathing. When he finally lifted his head, he looked at me over the top of Bethany's hair, and I saw something in my son's face I had not seen since he was 12 years old, and a boy at school had broken his glasses. He said to me very quietly, "Mama, Mama, what are we going to do?" I said, "Sweetheart, your mama has already started doing it. You sit here, you take care of your wife, let me handle your sister." He looked at me for a long moment. He has his father's eyes. Then he nodded once, and he turned back to Bethany. The police came to the hospital. They took Bethany's statement in a small room with a box of tissues on the table. They took photographs themselves, again, of every mark. The officer was a woman about my age with kind eyes and a notebook. She asked questions in a soft voice. She wrote everything down. Maureen was arrested at her condo in Charlotte at 9:47 the next morning. I know the time because my brother told me. The charges, when they were finally filed, were assault in the 2nd degree with the pregnancy as an aggravating factor, criminal trespass, and making terroristic threats. The bond was set high because of the threats, and because Maureen had, when the officers arrived, made a remark about Bethany that the responding officer found relevant to include in the report. She paid the bond. Of course she paid the bond. But the record was a record by then. The record was in the system, and the photographs were in the file, and the x-ray of my daughter-in-law's wrist was attached to the case number. I did not call my daughter. I did not call her that night. I did not call her that night. I did not call her in the morning. I let her find out from the officers at her door. I have wondered, in the months since, if that was cruel. I have decided that it was not. I have decided that the cruelty was hers, and the silence was simply mine, and there is a difference. She called me 20 minutes after she made bail. She was screaming. She was screaming things I will not repeat in this telling because they were the kind of things that once you have heard them come out of your own child's mouth, you cannot unhear, and I will not put them into anyone else's head. She accused me of betraying her. She accused me of choosing a stranger over my own blood. She said Bethany was lying, that she had only grabbed her arm, that Bethany had fallen on her own, that Bethany was trying to ruin her life, that I was a senile old woman who had been taken in by a gold-digging little nobody. I let her talk. I held the phone an inch from my ear and I let her run out of words, which took a long time. Then, when she finally went quiet, I said one thing. I said, "Maureen, honey, You put your hands on a pregnant woman in her own kitchen. You said things about her dead mother. You called my grandson trash. You did this. Not me, not Bethany, you, and you are going to live the rest of your life inside what you did. I will not be calling you again. Do not come to this house. Do not come to your brother's house. Do not come to your brother's house. Do not come to the hospital where Bethany works. If you do, you will be removed by people who will not be gentle about it. Goodbye, sweetheart. I hung up the phone. I sat on the edge of my bed. And then, for the first time since I had opened the door the afternoon before and seen my daughter-in-law's face, I cried. I cried for a long time. I cried because a mother does not stop being a mother just because her daughter does a terrible thing. I cried because somewhere in the woman who had screamed at me from a parking lot in Charlotte, there was still a 6-year-old who had pushed a girl off a swing, and I had not, all those years ago, known how to teach her the lesson she needed. But I will tell you this, I cried for one afternoon, and then I got up, and then I did the rest of what needed doing. I changed my will. That week, in Roxanne's office, with coffee from the place across the street, the beach property went to Caleb and Bethany outright. The retirement accounts went to them and to the baby in a trust. My house, which my husband and I had bought in 1986 with money we did not really have, would go to Caleb when I am gone. Maureen received in the new will one item, a photograph of her father, taken the year she was born in a silver frame, with a note. I will not tell you what the note said. That is between her and her father. The case did not go to trial. Maureen's lawyer, who I am told is very expensive, advised her to take a plea. She pled guilty to a reduced charge of assault and was sentenced to 18 months, of which she served 11 in a minimum security facility outside of Columbia. She lost her real estate license for the duration. The firm she worked for terminated her quietly. There was a restraining order, permanent, regarding Bethany and the baby. There is a separate one regarding Caleb. There is not one regarding me, because I did not ask for one, because I did not need a piece of paper to tell me what my own front door is for. My grandson was born in February, healthy, 8 pounds, 2 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and the long fingers of a piano player. They named him after my husband as planned. I was the second person to hold him after Caleb. He fell asleep on my chest in the rocking chair by the hospital window, and I sat there for an hour without moving. And I told him in a voice too low for anyone else to hear, every single thing I was ever going to do to keep him safe. Bethany finished out her pregnancy in my guest room, then moved back to her own house with Caleb, then came back to me for the first month after the baby was born, because that is what daughters do and that is what mothers do. And there is no daughter-in-law or mother-in-law about it once you are past a certain point. She still calls me Mama. She calls me Mama on the phone twice a week and in person every Sunday. She's gotten back the weight she lost. She has gone back to work part-time. She wears her hair in the same neat, low ponytail. My son and I do not talk about his sister much. We have talked about her exactly 3 times since it happened. Once in the hospital, once at the lawyer's office, once on the porch of my house the night after she went away. Each time we said only what needed saying, and then we stopped. I think he is grieving. I think I am too. We are grieving a person who is still alive, which is its own particular country, and we are walking through it slowly, the two of us, with a baby between us. I want to tell you the thing I have learned, because I think it is the only reason to tell a story like this one out loud. When somebody hurts a person you love, you have a choice about what to do next. The world will tell you to be loud about it. The world will tell you to post about it, to scream about it, to make a scene, to confront, to vent, to perform your outrage where everyone can see it. I'm here to tell you, from the other side of one of the worst years of my life, that the loud way is not the strong way. The loud way is the way that makes you feel better for an afternoon and changes nothing. The strong way is quiet. The strong way is phone calls. The strong way is documentation. The strong way is the people you have spent your whole life being kind to, picking up on the second ring. The strong way is a kettle on the stove and a clean dish towel and a guest room with fresh sheets and a lawyer's office at 9 in the morning. The strong way does not announce itself. It just arrives one Tuesday in October in a gray sweater with flour on its arms, and it opens the door, and it sees what needs to be seen, and it gets to work. My grandson is 8 months old now. He has 2 teeth. He laughs when I sing to him, even though I cannot sing. He sleeps on my chest on Sunday afternoons in the same rocking chair my husband sat in when our own children were small. The kettle is on. The light is coming through the window. My daughter-in-law is in the next room humming. This is the life I have. I chose it. I would choose it again. I have thought about that Tuesday in October more times than I can count. Not because I regret what I did. I do not regret a single phone call I made that afternoon. I have thought about it because I want to understand for myself how a person I raised in the same house, at the same table, with the same Sunday mornings and the same bedtime stories, became a person who could put her hands on a pregnant woman in a kitchen and walk out without looking back. And the answer I have come to, slowly, is that nothing comes from nowhere. Every cruelty has a long tail behind it. Maureen did not become Maureen on a Tuesday afternoon. She became Maureen across 34 years of small moments that I did not name correctly when they happened, including a swing set when she was 6, and I am her mother. And that is a thing I have to sit with for the rest of my life. But here is what I have also come to understand. A person is not only what they have been shaped into. A person is also what they choose, again and again, in the rooms where no one is watching. Bethany grew up in a trailer with a mother who worked herself to death. By every story the world likes to tell, Bethany should have come out hard. She came out gentle. She chose gentle. She chooses it again every morning at 4 in the morning when she pulls another woman through the worst night of her life in a hospital room. That is what I mean by character. Character is not where you started. Character is what you keep choosing. And I have come to believe that there are 3 things a woman has to grow inside herself if she wants to live a life she can stand to look at. The first is decency, plain decency. The kind that knows the difference between what you want to do and what is right to do and chooses the right one even when nobody is keeping score. The second is the long, slow patience to think before you act, to make a phone call instead of a scene, to write a thing down instead of shouting it out. My brother was on the bench for 21 years because he learned young that the world rewards the people who can hold a hard feeling in their hand without throwing it. And the third is the simple willingness to keep getting up. To open the door on a Tuesday, to put a kettle on, to say, I'm going to take care of it, and then to actually do the taking care of it, even when your hands are shaking, even when the person you have to protect your family from is the person you carried for 9 months. I am 63 years old. I have buried a husband and watched a daughter ruin her own life and held a grandson on my chest in a rocking chair. And the only thing I know for certain, the only thing I would put my name to, is this. The loud way changes nothing. The patient way changes everything. Choose the patient way. Changes everything. Choose the patient way. Choose it on the small days. It will be there for you on the day you need it.